Christ is in our midst.
He is in our midst.
So the gospel this morning is one of those fun stories where exciting things happen. And every time I hear this story, it reminds me of an encounter that I had in my youth as a young boy in a boat on the middle of the lake in the middle of the storm. My family had gone camping, and on our big trip, we visited some friends in the mountains of Colorado, and they lent us their motorboat for us to go putz around the reservoir that day. It was a beautiful day, blue skies, it was wonderful, and we were just touring, right? We didn't really have an agenda, we were just putzing along. And the wind started picking up, and we started to move to the west, and we started seeing the clouds start to develop, as they do. And in Colorado, the storms can come on you just like that. So we turned the boat, we started heading west toward where the harbor was. But the wind kept getting stronger and stronger, and we found ourselves not making any progress at all. My dad had a throttle full going, and looking for the markers in the shoreline. Are we making any progress? And no, we were not. And the storm was getting bigger and bigger. We could just see it, the clouds looming up ahead of us, getting darker and darker. And then we started seeing these flashes of light and thunder, and my heart started quaking. And then the rain started falling, and lightning hit the lake that we were on. And we knew that we were in trouble because we could not make it to safe harbor, and the storm was fully upon us. So my dad, he steered us over. We were able to get over to a little island that was there in the lake, and we shored it and got out of the boat, out of the water, and huddled under the bushes in the rainstorm while the lightning was crashing, the thunder was resounding. And I remember sitting there, looking at the water, lapping up against the shore. And I was like 2 feet away from the water, thinking, lightning is hitting that water. The whole lake is electrified. If I touch that water, I'm going to die. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute, rain is also water. Could the electricity jump from the water to the rain, and then I could die here? And as a 10-year-old boy, being terrified, it was a lot. And I doubted whether or not I was going to live to see another day. But as quickly as storms come in Colorado, they also go quickly. And passed away, the wind died down, the sun came back out, we were able to get back in the boat and make our way to safe harbor. So I trust you can see why this story of the gospel reminds me of that experience that I had. When Jesus had sent the disciples out alone into the lake to cross it to the other side. And as they were crossing in the middle of the night, the winds rose up, and their labors to make any sort of progress were stalled. They couldn't proceed any farther against the supposed wind and the waves. And Jesus, on the mountaintop, he saw them. He saw them struggling, and he came to them, but they didn't recognize him. In their fear and their doubt, they thought he was a ghost. But Jesus said to them, "Be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid." And then Peter, in a very profound, amazing, miraculous exploration of his own faith, said, "Lord, if it is you, call me out to you." And Peter walked on the waves. They weren't calm, but he walked on the waves to Christ until he saw the wind and the waves, and his faith wavered. And he sank, crying out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus, as he does, he caught him. He raised him back up, went with him back into the boat, and the disciples marveled, saying that he is truly the Son of God. And this story is important to us not because we find ourselves out in the middle of lakes, in the middle of thunderstorms, but because our daily lives are sometimes rough seas. Stuff happens that we don't foresee. We get hit by waves of unforeseen circumstances, maybe a flat tire. The wind knocks us off course, maybe through the death of a loved one. Health diagnosis, flooding, literal storms, children not doing what they're supposed to be doing, not getting the promotion that you thought you were supposed to be getting. All of these circumstances in our lives are the storms, are the winds, are the waves that we experience in our daily lives. And we try so hard in our efforts to make some sort of forward progress sometimes. We try so hard, and we're just stuck. Sometimes we just can't go anywhere. And we're mobilized. And while we're there mobilized, wave after wave, more and more unforeseen circumstances threaten to knock us backwards and to drown us. And I want to encourage you. The disciples were there in that boat, not making any forward progress. Don't be dismayed when you feel like you're stuck and you're not making any progress in your life, in your faith. Jesus was praying on that mountaintop with his disciples, and he saw them. And Jesus sees you being stuck in a situation that you may be in. He sees you being pounded by those waves, and he loves you. And he comes to you in that. The hard truth is that sometimes we want calm seas. We want things to be easy. We want peace to reign in our lives. We want all of the green lights on the road. We don't want any sort of turmoil. We don't want any waves. God doesn't calm every storm that we live in. God doesn't. And sometimes God, in his love for us, he sends us into the darkness. He sends us into the storm. Why? Why does God do that when all we want is peaceful, calm seas? He doesn't send us into the night and into those storms because he doesn't love us, but because he wants our faith to grow in him. He wants us to look for him in those storms because he comes to us in every single one of those storms. He is there. He is always there, telling us the same thing that he told the disciples. Be of good cheer. It is I. Don't be afraid. And what's incredible is in this translation, it is I. It lacks the punch that's actually there in the Greek. Jesus said, rejoice, I am. Fear not. Jesus, God, sent those disciples into the storm to reveal to them that he is the God who saved their forefathers out of the storm of Egypt. When God told those Israelites, I will come rescue you, I have heard the lament, I have heard your prayers, I have heard how you've been stuck, I will come rescue you. And Moses asked God, who are you? And God said, I am. I am. I'm there. I'm present. I'm with you. I have never left you. Rejoice. I am. And don't be afraid. When Christ is here with us and we receive him and we recognize him, what is there to be afraid of? What should we be afraid of? Nothing. God comes to us in those storms, and he comes to us and reveals himself, and he invites us with these same words. Rejoice in the storm. I am. Don't be afraid in the storm. I am. Come to me in the storm. I am. And we see Peter doing this. We see Peter doing this miraculous thing, walking on water. I mean, who hasn't tried that? It's miraculous. It's impossible. And yet, Peter, in his love for the Lord, said, Lord, I want to be with you, and I'm impatient for you to come to me. Let me come to you. And Jesus said, come. And his faith made him walk on water. He rejoiced. He was approaching the great I am. He was not afraid until he took his eyes off of our Lord. He remembered the storm that they were in. He saw the wind. He saw the waves. And he took his eyes off of the great I am. He was distracted by those waves, by that wind. And he sank. Christ, in his compassion, reached out to Peter and pulled him up and compassionately and tenderly said, oh, you of little faith, I'm here. Rejoice. I am. Do not be afraid. The goal of the Lord Lord is not to save us from the storms of this life. That's not his goal. His goal is not to give us peace on this earth. At least not how we too commonly think of peace. His goal is to save us from the bondage of slavery to sin and to death. That is what he came to do. That is the true storm that we too often are blind to. That is what he came to do. Not to calm the storms, but to grow our love for him above the storms. To grow our faith in him that transcends the storms. To increase our daily dependence upon him. And to have us follow him even on top of the waters. What? You mean I'm not going to get hammered by these waves? The waves didn't go away. But Christ transcends that, and he invites us to follow him, and to rejoice, and to not be afraid. So this morning, pause for a moment and just think, what are the storms that are raging in your life? What are they? Where do you see the wind affecting you? Where do you see those waves hammering at you? Where do you find yourself saying, Lord, please stop this. This is too much. Rejoice. I am. Do not be afraid. This past spring, I experienced a pretty hard storm. It came up out of nowhere and knocked me down, knocked my boat over, thought I was drowning. And I looked for the Lord. He was there. He was there in the midst of my pain, in the midst of my fear, in the midst of my agony, in the midst of my feeling like I was literally drowning in my circumstances, wishing that Jesus would just rescue me from the wind and the waters. What his goal was not to rescue me. His goal was to increase my faith in him. I found Christ in that storm. I'm still looking for him in this storm, but I found him because he is there. He is the great I am, and he will never fail to come to you in the midst of the storm and invite you to come to him on top of the waves. We must love our Lord God enough to follow him into the impossible. We must love him enough to accept these storms as good things from him. These waves that hit us, these winds that knock us down, these are good things because Christ is there. He sees us. He prays for us. He comes to us. And he encourages us to do the impossible. To be saved. To rise above the tribulations of this world and to follow him. He will not abandon us. Brothers and sisters, hear me. He will not abandon you. He will not. Because he loves you and he's praying for you and he's rescuing you. He is the great I am. He is with us even when we don't see him. Even when we think he's a ghost. My storm just got worse because of what I see. May he give us the spiritual eyes to see that he is there in the midst of the storm. He comes to us. So this morning, come to him. Come to him with your cares, with your fears, with your brokenness. Come and approach the chalice, walking on the water, saying, Lord, let me come to you. And he says, be of good cheer. I am